The human soul has a minimum daily requirement of entertainment, but listening to a podcast like you're doing right now, yeah, that doesn't count. Welcome to the world of MGM Rewards, where we have the greatest live shows on earth, the biggest names in sports, the best chefs on the planet, and the most unforgettable nights of your life. This is way beyond watching 20-second clips on your phone. This is all the entertainment you can handle and more. So join MGM Rewards now and visit MGMResorts.com to book your next Vegas getaway. Welcome to the show.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Steering wheel. Lobster steering wheel, yeah. Give him steering wheel. Hey, steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to him. Come on. Whoa. You like my bass? You like it? How the f*** is possible?
I'm driving like a grandma.
Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me?
From the radio. The radio.
Ralph, acknowledge. Now, come on, close him down and kill him.
We've got a lunatic on the track down the Hanger Straight.
I am so annoyed.
Hello and welcome inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 756. 756. The Mexican City Grand Prix, not the Mexican Grand Prix. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. Tonight we're going to cover the Mexican Grand Prix. You know how we do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on.
That's exactly what we do. But before doing that, I have to introduce my co-host tonight, which of course means...
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Hey, how you? Nice new office there.
Yeah, I have nothing on my shelves yet. No pictures up. Everything's in cardboard boxes, which you can't see out of shot. Yeah, I got a long ways to go with my office, but at least I have my microphone up, and hopefully I'm recording.
That's good. Yes, I can hear you, so that's all
good.
That really matters.
Yeah, it's all, whether we ever release this podcast, just this quality time you and I have to talk.
Just together time.
Yeah. Exactly right. Did you get the Mexican Grand Prix watched?
I did. Yes.
In all its glory? Good.
It was a beautiful day because, West Ham also beat Liverpool, so we're third in.
Big.
It is very big.
Yeah, that's
third
big.
in the Premiership. So anyway, so back to Formula One, but just had to throw that out there because I'm happy. It's a lot of championships on the line this year for me. Mm-hmm.
When do you have a derby?
What's that?
When do you have a derby? Yeah.
I don't know when the next London Derby is actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking. I'm trying to
I'll let you know though. I'll give you a call. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, boy. Hey, Paul, that whole section of my notes called the key elements, those don't apply to this race.
Correct. You were talking about Coda. I did pick that up. I was going to see what you were going to do with it there. Yeah.
You're going to watch me squirm say, the track in turn one, the elevation change is enormous. Wrong note.
He's an imposter, people, an imposter. Yeah. He knows not what he speaks.
That's right. So I have no key elements about the Mexican. Actually, I do. I'm going to make them up on the fly, Paul, because I'm a professional. I rise above it.
You've been here before.
I have been here. Yeah, about 755 podcasts of me doing this. So, Paul, key elements. Well, here's the key element to me. If you'd be forgiven to think that Mexico was kind of a happy hunting ground for Red Bull, and it traditionally has been, and you'd be forgiven for thinking the same thing on Friday, because it did look like on Friday they had things well in hand. Yep. Come Saturday, Mercedes takes pole, 1-2 on the grid.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, whoa. And then we had all these issues with the wing, which I thought was really interesting. Did you watch that pre-race interview with Adrian Newey and him explaining the wing issues they were having?
I did not get to see that, no, because I get the fuzzy. I just get to see Will running around frantically, peeing on the rear tires of all the cars.
Yeah.
So don't get any really good in-depth stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
You don't get to see the Adrian Newey's weigh in. Yeah.
No, that would be interesting though. Yeah. How's he looking? I know he's.
Yeah, he's looking better. Yeah, he's got kind of banged up and everything, I guess.
Banged up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that was a key issue with the rear wing issue that Red Bull had on Saturday, cost them pole. But in hindsight, maybe starting third was a good place to start to get that toe. So let's jump into the race. It was a sunny race, warm. Tarmac was warm. It was hot on Saturday, which favored the Mercedes. They were able to actually start generating some heat in those rear tires on Saturday, which had eluded them on Friday. So that was good. And it was just sort of a combination of things that kind of came together. It's got that high altitude, low oxygen, difficult to keep the brakes cool, the engine cool, difficult to keep those tires within the window. It's not a real abrasive, but you certainly get some degradation on the tires, and it's difficult to manage. A lot of factors at play here, and not least of which is the home track for Sergio Perez. So the crowd was certainly out in force.
He's a local, is he?
Yeah, apparently.
I didn't pick up on that. That's
no,
weird.
I didn't either. No. Yeah, I was wondering why they were walking around with Max with the Mexican flag at the end. So anyway, huge support, great turnout. And it's, I always say it's a great turnout. I always think that there's certain races to get that kind of turnout is a real feat. And Austin's one of those. Because what is Mexico City? 15 million people? You can't grab 100,000 people for a race out of 15 million. You may be doing it wrong.
Yeah. Especially racing. I mean, the Mexican, South America in general, Central America, they're all big into racing for whatever. It's always in there. Football and racing, I think, is a big one. So definitely a big crowd. It's interesting though, obviously very partisan crowd in Mexico.
Sure.
There was a lot of Perez fans at COTA, but COTA was more a cosmopolitan group of maniac Formula One fans, which makes it a little different atmosphere, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. So come Sunday, things completely switched around and started to unfold the way you may have expected them to on Friday. As a matter of fact, my fantasy GP, I totally nailed it on every one of them.
I thought I nailed it. I thought I had exactly the top three, but then when I look back, I did not. I had Sergio passing Lewis Hamilton on the last lap, evidently.
Yeah. No, that's not easy to do.
No.
So I had the win, place, and show. I had the most positions gained.
Yeah.
Number of safety cars. I had one.
Yeah, I got that too. Yeah.
So I nailed that one. Got me up to third place. I'm on the podium so far.
You are. And actually, I noticed. I checked a couple of weeks ago. I think Don Racing was in the lead at that time, and I checked, and he was like, he or she, I guess, was in the top 10 overall.
Yeah.
Amongst other leagues. I mean, that's pretty impressive scores by our peeps. Yeah, good job to you guys. So I don't know where you are overall. You could be somewhere now. I don't know. But
I generally never rate.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm kind of like West Ham.
It's me. Okay, Eeyore. Nobody.
If it is a good day, which I doubt. So anyway, all right, let's talk about Red Bull, shall we? We'll start right at the top, at the sharp end of the grid with Red Bull.
Yes, the young Dutchman was a bit annoying out there today.
Yes, he was. Red Bull, Max Verstappen P1, Sergio Perez in P3. That would be this Perez.
You like my pace? You like it?
Yes, we do, Sergio. A good pace in P3. Red Bull looks set to dominate on Friday. As I mentioned, Saturday they discovered an aero load issue on their high downforce wings, causing issues and leaving them third and fourth on the grid for the start. It looked like Mercedes could repay the favor from Austin, which they were favored to win. But come Sunday, Adrian Newey and the team sorted out their rear wing issues. Max converted his third place grid spot into the lead at turn 1 and never really looked back, and he cruised to a dominant victory over 16 seconds ahead of Hamilton, leading Toto Wolff to say that they could have driven circles around Hamilton at Mexico. Max was really in a different zone. He was than the rest of the grid on Sunday and extended his lead in the Drivers' Championship by 19 points, with the team now drawing to within just 1 point in the Constructors' title. So things are getting very, very tight up front for the Constructors, where all the money's paid out, as well as Max extending that lead to 19 points.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure. I mean, that's what Red Bull want to win is the Constructors,
Yes.
right? And Sergio scoring them and Bottas not being in the mix, definitely a major advantage to Red Bull right now, the Sergio equation. And I heard on another podcast, they were just thinking, that Sergio really wasn't aiding anything for the team because he didn't help Max with his Drivers' Championship points, but completely omitting the fact that Red Bull want to win the Constructors, and they gained a ton of points this weekend because of the Bottas situation.
I mean, they want the drivers for sure, and they want Max to win for sure, but that doesn't pay him a dime. It's the Constructors. That's the money.
Absolutely. I mean, they're going to do anything to win both, right? So, it was the second row, very, very much like Russia, where you start on there. You've probably got the upper hand, but I think Max should probably send a nice Harry and David fruit basket to Valtteri for letting him through without much of an ordeal.
Maybe he wouldn't have if they didn't treat Valtteri Bottas like the eternal tail gunner that he was.
Yes, good wingman. Yeah, not so good wingman, actually.
Not so good wingman.
No.
He just rolled out the red carpet for Max.
Yeah, go ahead, man. Oh, no, I'm not even going to go alongside you. You just go ahead in front.
Go ahead.
Lewis will catch up, I'm sure. But that was quite I think they got it all wrong. Definitely Valtteri got it all wrong there at the beginning and basically opened the door with Heaven's Gates there for Max just to drive off into the distance. I mean, if he'd have been stuck behind a Mercedes, could he have got by? Probably by the end of the race, they would have been figured it some way, but they definitely took the pressure off Max completely where he can control the race the whole way around,
Right. Well, for Sergio, he had a tougher time. He ran wide at turn one to avoid the Bottas spin. But he put his head down after that, clawed all the way back to the tail light of Lewis Hamilton at the end to finish third at his home race, to an adoring crowd's delight. Mercedes surely knew that Sergio would be used for an aggressive undercut option to put pressure on Lewis. And, Red Bull used it anyway. And of course, Mercedes had to respond. They had to react to that irrespective. But the team head into Brazil next, and that has traditionally also favored Red Bull, or been at least a decent hunting ground for Red Bull. And the question is, can Lewis and Mercedes turn the tide there and turn it around to resuscitate his championship? It's not over. He's 19 points. Max could have a DNF, and that would change everything. So it's certainly not over. But great to see the adulation, the crowd going crazy for Sergio, first Mexican to lead a Mexican Grand Prix and to have a podium, first Mexican to have a podium at the Mexican Grand Prix. A great result for Checo, and I was super happy for him.
Yeah, it was. Just, you just got to think everyone just there all weekend, just cheering, chanting his name. For him not to actually be there on the podium at the end would be the travesty, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, with the tactics there, obviously Mercedes moved first with Lewis instead of allowing Sergio to jump in and try and undercut him. I think that would have been the key there. But don't you think that even they went with Sergio too long? I mean, he's the guy that can make the tires last forever, right? More than anybody else on the grid, I would say. If there's anyone that can make, so man against man, right, lap for lap, I would pick Sergio over anyone getting the most out of a set of tires over a long period of time. So I felt they made a misstep there by, obviously they were trying to hold out as long as they could, and the Lewis jumped first, but if they'd have reacted super, super quick, I still think that Sergio would have had a much better time and to actually make something on Lewis, but they kind of had a middle ground there. I don't know how many laps after Lewis pitted that Sergio did, but he just didn't, it seemed like he started losing time way too much. And then by the time he pitted, he had a lot left to gain on Lewis. And he did, and he caught him fairly quickly. But I just feel like they'd have pitted him instantly, that Sergio may have been able to jump Lewis and be on the second step there.
I'm trying to remember. Let me see. Perez, Lewis is lap 29, Perez is 40.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of laps to be losing time, right?
Yeah, and he was losing some decent chunks of times. I think he was setting 121s to Lewis's 120, right?
Right. I mean, I think it kind of evened out a little bit, but there was still a little advantage to Lewis. The first 3 laps are always going to be the biggest delta there between old tires and new tires. But I don't know. I just think, I mean, they nearly got it all right, but I think right there was probably the opportunity to get by Lewis without having to fight him all the way down to the end, to the last lap.
Yeah. Great win for Red Bull. They needed that. Great points haul for the team, for the constructors, and just a sublime race by Max. He was just in a different zone for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Lewis and Mercedes, shall we? Lewis Hamilton in P2, and let's see, Valtteri Bottas in P15. Bottas in P15. Lewis lost the spot to Max, presumably, as he had a great start, actually, and pulled alongside Bottas and missed out on the tow down the front line that Max got from being behind Valtteri. And with Valtteri spinning, Hamilton was left chasing Verstappen for the rest of the afternoon, complaining that Max was just too quick. And in hindsight, he certainly was. Lewis did manage to keep Perez at bay, despite the Mexican having fresher tires, but it was hit and miss every time, which I thought was interesting, Paul. Every time Lewis got behind back markers, you could visibly see the impact it had on his car, and you could see Sergio, close in. But once he got around a back marker, then all of a sudden he could pull out a safer gap, and it was just interesting to see how much that Mercedes hates following other cars. But when it came down to it, I don't know what he finished, 2, 3, 4 seconds off the pace, but Lewis was, even if Sergio got up there with the DRS, Lewis is just not. This isn't his first rodeo. He's not easy to pass on any track, and that was always going to be difficult. And I think Sergio sort of kind of ran out of steam, out of tires by the time he got up there behind Lewis, and just really could never mount a challenge. But conversely, a little surprised at the pace delta between Lewis and Max on Friday's pace. At moments in certain runs, they were anywhere from 0.3 to 0.5 off the pace. But in the race, finishing 16 seconds behind, that's quite a delta.
Yeah, it is. And historically, the Mercedes doesn't like to follow, right? And then you're in the higher altitude. It's even more, I don't know where the graph comes, but a higher downforce setup versus a lower downforce setting, in a place where the downforce, is less impactful. I think that had an equation to do it. I mean, obviously Perez was able to get closer to Lewis because they had a higher downforce setting, and that's why Lewis was really hurting. But then the lower downforce setting kind of helped him keep Perez at bay. And we know there's a lot more going on there in the cockpit with managing power and the battery power and making sure you save a couple of laps till you really need it, et cetera. And it seemed like Lewis kind of played that very well, like we've seen Verstappen do in the past as well. So, I think Lewis got the most he could out of that event, that race, and protected second place, which is important to him for sure in the Drivers' Championship. Could so easily not have gone that way, but he used every bit of skill he's had, and experience. And I think the team played his strategy well to keep him in that position, really doing the undercut and getting him before Sergio pitted, I think was super important.
Yeah, it's probably not exactly when the team would have wanted to pit, but it's kind of when they had to, right?
Right. It's all a game of chicken, right? Is he going to come in now? Everyone was waiting. And they're just waiting for the earliest moment you can possibly get in where you think the tires are still going to be, usable by the end of the race. Right. And that's what they did. Yeah.
Right. Valtteri got punted by Dan Ricciardo at turn 1, and while he tried to make a recovery drive, he spent the first half fighting against a feisty Ricciardo as they both boxed at the same time after the incident and came out nose to tail. Valtteri looked like he may recover, but then he had that slow pit stop, which meant he became fast lap fodder, basically, at that point, with the team boxing him twice to try and steal the point away from Max, which they eventually did. No doubt that Lewis's second place hurts him in the title race, but it was Valtteri's unfortunate spin that really cost the team the most in the Constructors' Championship lead, which is where the big money is. And Toto lamented how easy the team made it for Max to nip around the outside and steal the lead. And he's right. Hard to blame Valtteri for the spin, because that was really kind of on Dan. But Valtteri did give Max, as you mentioned, a lot of room over there on the left. And that was, he gave Max the rubbered in racing line and allowed him to stamp on the brakes late and take the lead.
He sure did.
Yeah,
that was a very bad play by Valtteri, I would say. We talk about elbows out, that was elbows in, and point the fingers, go by, you guys. I mean, I get that Max was on the best line going in, but still Valtteri still gave him a lot of room out there. I mean, it wasn't like pinching him to the side of the road, which I would choose to do. He also braked a lot earlier than even Lewis, who was on the inside, who was in a dirtier part of the track.
Right.
So basically, Valtteri just got it wrong. He got that braking point wrong. And these are some of the things we've talked about, envisioning the first lap corners, and these are things you need to test when you're out there, even on the recon laps or whatever, to see how much grip is actually in the track in that braking zone, because we knew that going in turn 1 was going to be super important for everybody to get through it. So you need to know what options you have there. And Valtteri just kind of bailed out. If there's anyone out of those three that should have been braking latest, it was Valtteri. He's got way less to lose. He knows that if he's got Max on the left and Lewis on the right, obviously he's not really racing Lewis, that if he just goes in straight and even doesn't even make down to the apex, Max is held on the outside, Lewis is going to go through. He's done his job. But instead, Valtteri braked early, and I cannot believe how much space he gave Max. I don't believe it's got everything to do with just how much more grip there was on that side of the road. I think Valtteri got it wrong. He braked way too early. He was way more apprehensive than he should have been in that point in the track. As I said, he could have done all kinds of things to help Lewis and help himself in there. In the end, by him braking early, those two went by him, shouldn't have happened, right? And then he turns in all the way down to the apex, and I know Ricciardo locked up his brakes a little bit going in there, but that was before that last braking zone. He'd unlocked the brakes already, and he was just where he was. And if you notice, when you turn into turn 1, when Max did it, he gave a car width room from the inside apex. Because when you're in that position, you don't know exactly where everyone is.
Right.
And so Max turned in. He could have still got to the apex, but he chose not to get all the way to the apex. Give that a little bit of room to the inside just in case there's somebody there. Valtteri did not do that. And so he came all the way straight down to the apex. He had room to turn in and get a decent run through the corner, not necessarily pull it all the way down to the apex, but he turned blind into the apex, and Ricciardo was sitting there. So I think, some people are talking about Ricciardo should have a penalty. I really don't think so. I think Ricciardo had every right to be there, and I think Valtteri should have had more common sense in not just blindly turning to the apex and expecting everyone just to get out of his way.
Right. Yeah, it was a tough day in the office for Valtteri, that's for sure. He ends up back in P15. Conversely, a great day for AlphaTauri and Pierre Gasly, who finished P4. Now, Yuki Tsunoda was a DNF. Pierre took avoiding action, but he was in the pound seats. He could see everything happen in front of him. And so he took avoiding action after having a terrific starting position, missed the carnage at turn 1, where he then set about producing a very quiet race to a brilliant P4 and best of the rest for AlphaTauri, who is, licking their wounds from the Tsunoda incident during quali, unfortunately. But Pierre, another great just nice, quiet, uneventful drive to P4. Great result. Even when you had Ferraris trying to reel you in. Sorry, and Leclerc couldn't do it. Sainz got around, couldn't do it. Pierre holding his own. Great race.
Yeah, I mean, the AlphaTauri was very handy here, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The match of the Red Bull DNA and the Honda engine seem to notoriously do well here, and Gasly, when he's got the chance, does a super job in the car. And even Yuki was actually very, very handy out there. I mean, obviously he got the grid penalties, etc., put him in a position that he shouldn't have been in. Ultimately, he should have been in the top 10. So that was really unfortunate for him. But the car really, I mean, the class of the midfield for sure. The Mercedes and the Red Bull, they were gone, but absolutely no one could touch the AlphaTauri, certainly in Pierre's hands. So I thought it was a great drive and a great run by the team. I said, I think Yuki was a bit unlucky, but at least I think he's actually been making progress, really. So I think it was actually very unlucky not to get a result here too.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, he got caught up in that Ocon sandwich that ended his race at turn 2. Yuki said that he thought the team may have been up for some points for both cars if he was able to stay in the race. And given his pace, I think he may have been right. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, due to the power unit change, he started 17th. This meant that he was susceptible to that kind of incident. And it's a shame because the team did look like they were on top of their brake, tires, and engine cooling all weekend, or at least their management of that. And that's critical at this altitude. So it looks like they'd had that sorted out. At similar altitude in Brazil and a sprint race, can the team continue this kind of performance? Can Yuki get enough up in enough of the sharp end to stay away from this kind of stuff up there with Pierre? I don't know. Time will tell. But yeah, it was difficult. It was one of those racing incidents with the sandwich with Schumacher, Ocon, and Yuki, and just nobody had any place to go.
Right.
3-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does not work. So poor Yuki, but yeah, as you said, they've got something really to take with them to Brazil because that car should be just as good there too. So
yeah, exactly. Ferrari, Charles Leclerc P5, Carlos Sainz P6. Charles avoided the turn 1 incident, had a good run going, but then they boxed him early to try to pressure Gasly early in the race, and that didn't work in the end. And then conversely, Paul, Carlos ran a longer stint to try to take the fight to Gasly in the second half of the race. And the teams even swapped Charles with Carlos after some radio shenanigans. But that didn't work either. And so they swapped back for the finish. And so Charles finishes in P5. Carlos felt he had a good race pace all weekend. And in the big picture, finishing ahead of both McLarens was a big boost for the team in the Constructors' Championship, as they're now 13 points ahead of McLaren. So Charles is P5, critical performance from him, great race, and even Carlos working up to P6, but two different strategies, pitting early, pitting late. Later on, there's another team that did that, didn't work out, but it did here.
Yeah, I was interested in. Obviously, I just don't think Ferrari had anything for Gasly and the AlphaTauri. Yeah. No matter what way they played it, they just didn't have the pace. But I thought it was interesting when they did the swap back.
The human soul has a minimum daily requirement of entertainment, but listening to a podcast like you're doing right now, yeah, that doesn't count. Welcome to the world of MGM Rewards, where we have the greatest live shows on earth, the biggest names in sports, the best chefs on the planet, and the most unforgettable nights of your life. This is way beyond watching 20-second clips on your phone. This is all the entertainment you can handle and more. So join MGM Rewards now and visit MGMResorts.com to book your next Vegas getaway. Welcome to the show.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, I get why they said Leclerc, let Sainz go get him.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately that strategy was a better strategy, and Sainz kind of earned that spot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really follow it super close to see how far how many gains Carlos made on Leclerc after he got by, but was there a big gap, or was he not able to make any time? I really don't recall.
I don't think Carlos was able to make any gains on Pierre.
No, but was he able to make gains on Leclerc? Was he able to pull away?
I don't recall seeing that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing how much time he had between him and Leclerc once he got around. Now I know he was a little critical of Leclerc, saying that he was, really delaying, letting him through and making mistakes, trying to keep him behind. I think Charles responded to that. I haven't read that yet, but anyway, but I do take your point though, Paul. If you ran split strategies and you boxed Charles early, then that's his strategy and that's where he is and that's his pace.
Yeah.
If you did the strategy and box Carlos late and he's got fresh tires and he's faster, then that's his strategy. And he's got a better strategy and he should be ahead. Now you could argue, well, if he does, then he's got to pass Charles to do it. But team orders to let him through and then keep it that way isn't fair either, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably more of a political decision, I guess, than anything else, than a sporting decision. But, when do they, what are they gaining by swapping back? If it was something to do with driver championship points, et cetera, maybe that would make sense. But, so Ferrari's going to finish 5th and 6th no matter what. Right?
No matter what, yeah. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P12, Sebastian Vettel P10. Lance had a decent shunt on Saturday, and that put him at the back on the back foot on Sunday, starting 20th. So he had a lot to make up for and spent the day battling George Russell in the back markers. Never really could recover into the points, managed to get back up in P12. Anything else to add about the Lancinator?
No, not really. It wasn't his greatest weekend, was it? Really? Yeah. I mean, that big crash really, just put him back, and that car wasn't quick enough either. So there was nothing he was going to do with it.
No, Vettel avoided the turn 1 incident, ran to the top 10 all day, had some good pace to bring home some points. Seb was on his own for most of the race, said that he knew if he could hold the position on the first lap, their long run pace on Friday suggested that if they could hold that position, that's where they would stay and they would finish there. And that's pretty much exactly how it went to plan. So he finished.
Yeah, I thought he was actually going to get a better finish. I mean, he was up to 7th and 6th, and I'm not sure. Did he have to be pitted again right at the end? Okay.
Yeah.
Ran out of tires, I guess. But
but I thought he would do a little better than 10th. But I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was doing well. I thought the car was doing well, and he had it in a good position most of the race. So I think actually finished P10 would probably be a bit frustrating for him, considering how most of the race went for him.
Right. Alfa Romeo, Kimi Räikkönen in P8, Antonio Giovinazzi in P11. First, we do have to mention Antonio's terrific start that saw him move all the way up to 6th place on the first lap. And while the safety car restart made him vulnerable to Carlos Sainz, and he lost a spot to Sainz, he still looked good for some serious points. Unfortunately, the earlier pit stop that they tried dropped him back in traffic and amidst the Bottas-Ricardo battle, and he struggled to recover from that point onwards to get back into the points. So it's a real shame because he was up in 6th.
Yeah, I mean, that he did, but it's an opportunist, kind of luck of the draw
thing. It is, and the recovering cars that are out of position are always going to overtake him.
Yeah, and he went back pretty quick. He held onto it for a little bit, but he didn't own it. He didn't have the pace to be in that position, so I think he kind of ended up where he needed to be. But yeah, you definitely don't want to throw. If you do that early stop, you do it for a good reason, and you don't throw them back into traffic. I mean, or you keep them out. I mean, it's really important not to just give up on knowing where that car's going to come out of the pit lane. That's just as important as tire life and pit stop time and everything. Where you come out and how much you lose or gain on those on the open when you come back out can really make a big delta difference. And so if you come out and you're in a bunch of traffic, then anything you get, you're going to gain by the early stop is pretty much thrown away.
Yeah, for sure. Well, by contrast to that race, the team ran Kimi much longer on his first stint, and that was the right call, as he finished in 8th and with some points. Yeah. So, it was a good run from Kimi.
Yeah, Kimi did have a good run. I mean, the tires seemed to go through little levels, didn't they, as we've always seen, but it seemed like you thought, oh, it's going bad, not graining per se, but you think they're going and then they just don't go, and then they come back a little bit and things like that. And I think Kimi kind of rode through that whole roller coaster on that set of tires, and he did a great job. His pace, I was looking at his pace during those stints on the older tires, and he was really keeping up. And that basically, when he did make the pit stop, made the difference and made him score those points. So I think actually Kimi had a fantastic race, even though it may not be spectacular, but what he did with the car and where he placed it and how he ran that tire run was very important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Gio was, maybe he's right. They had the pace to be in the points, and perhaps had he boxed with Kimi or around that time, that may have been a better strategy and had them both in the points. I don't know. It's difficult. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. But I felt like the Alphas just had better pace and certainly could have scored points as Kimi did. Yeah. Alpine, Fernando Alonso, P9, Esteban Ocon, P13. Esteban got sandwiched by Tsunoda and Schumacher, and amazingly, as the meat in that sandwich, he actually survived it, while the other two retired from that incident. This left him out of the points, but he had a pretty scrappy battle, a little scrappy drive back up to 13th with some decent battles along the way. Kind of fun to watch. He's back there in amongst them and tried to get back to the points. Couldn't get there, but P13 is the best he could do. He did say there was some damage on his car for sure, but it's DNF him.
Yep. So the Alpine just wasn't very handy, was it? So for Alonso to get anything out of it was probably a big thing. But Ocon, starting at the back, getting involved in that incident. It was a pretty strong car, though, eh? Because there's cars flying. I've seen some pictures, and there's cars flying all over the place. So,
I know.
Sometimes you see Formula One cars just hit a little curb and the front suspension collapses, and then you see two cars sandwich you in, and cars are up in the air, and they just keep on going. Pretty remarkable sometimes on where that force is strong on those cars.
Right. Let's see. Alonso had a better day. He passed Russell and Giovinazzi to get into the points. With Pierre at the sharp end of the grid, however, they lost ground to AlphaTauri for 5th in the constructors' title. So that wasn't good for them.
That is not good for them, not where they want to be. Yeah, Alonso, he was grabbing that car by the scruff of the neck. It wasn't a good car, and I think he, once again, as Alonso does, got something a little bit extra out of it than probably deserved. Yeah,
for sure. McLaren, Lando Norris in P10, Dan Ricciardo in P12. Dan had a good start, locked up in the braking zone to turn 1, ends up tapping Bottas. That spun him in what Dan called a typical lap 1 incident, as he had to go for it. And he said if he didn't go for it, someone else would. So he had to go for it. And so after that, he lost his front wing. He had to box for a new front wing. That early stop, though, Paul, meant that he was way long on those tires and just ran out of tires. So they had to stop him yet again. And that put him down in the order. He did manage to have a race-long battle with the guy he punted. But beyond that, it was always going to be a difficult day.
Yeah. Oh, just going back, I was confused there. But Vettel did finish 7th. He didn't finish P10. So just going back.
Did I have that wrong?
Yeah, he did finish, because you just said, Norris finished P10, which he did. And so I was a little confused. So he did finish where we thought he should. Okay. So there you go. Well done.
Yeah,
Sebastian
you're right.
Vettel.
P7. Yeah, I had that wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So back to Ricciardo. That was, as I said, I'm not actually going to blame Ricciardo for that incident in the beginning. I really think Bottas, turned in blindly into that corner and should have given a bit of room, at least given him an option. Even if you're going to force that guy to get up on the curb to avoid the contact, at least they've got an option to avoid the contact. And Ricciardo really was up on the curb trying to avoid it. So it was an insult to injury for Valtteri was that contact, and then he ended up fighting with that guy that he made the contact with the whole time, right? And he was always ahead. So, but the McLaren in general, surprising how bad it was, quite honestly. They didn't look great on the first day. Second day, they looked like they were making progress, but this doesn't really bode well. They've lost some space on with Ferrari.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, Brazil is kind of going to be a very similar track. So I got a feeling McLaren just need to fight and try and get anything they can out of these next two races and hopefully regain their form and some points against Ferrari for the end, else it may be too late.
Yeah, and it's not all, Lando, look, he started toward the back of the grid, and he was all day engaged in a recovery drive at that point, made it back up to the 10th and did so by pitting last. He was the last one of everyone to box. So they ran in the longest to retain that single point, and that's what he did. So, but in the end, as you mentioned, Paul, they lost serious ground to Ferrari. They have a lot of work to do to recover in Brazil and take that fight back to the Scuderia. But, it looked like there for a little bit it was going to be a runaway from Ferrari. Ferrari arguably not in a massive development program for this car at this point. Still seem to be coming back and scoring points. So it'll be interesting to see. They got to take this seriously because McLaren definitely needs the cash, and it'll be interesting to see how they do in Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's going to be damage limitation in Brazil, but then the next tracks should be really good for McLaren. Yes. So I think it's all going to come to a head right there. The last race parade between those two, crescendo. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
But it's just hard to follow, I mean, everyone was kind of blighted with that, and only certain cars were had a chance of getting that close. So it's unfortunate circumstance really, because it's a pretty decent track, but certain things make it difficult to have a super exciting race.
Circuit Hermanos Rodriguez.
Very well done.
Thank you. George Russell at Williams, P16, Nicholas Latifi, P17. George had a tough weekend with grid penalties, but after an electric start, he was in the points early on, having come from P16 all the way up to P9. Unfortunately, did not have the pace to hold off the cars that were out of position. They recovered through the field, ended up passing him with ease in that 3 DRS zone track with only 1 detection zone, I might add. And he ended out of the points, unfortunately, for George. But it was always going to be a tough day, and he knew that. So I don't think points were ever really that realistic.
No, probably not. Not a good weekend for Williams. Just kind of get through it. It's interesting with the DRS zones. There's multi DRS zones with one activation zone. Just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. I don't like it. We don't like DRS in general, but I really don't like that process at all. Because you could, I don't know. It just messes with the race too much, I feel.
Yeah. Talking about messing with the race, Nicholas Latifi couldn't manage his temps and tires either. They weren't working well, and he boxed twice trying to find some grip. Nick said there was just too much tire management, and that prevented him from going all out and really achieving the full pace of the car.
Yep.
Yeah. And then finally wrapping it up is Haas F1, Mick Schumacher DNF, Nikita Mazepin P18. Mick's race ended on lap 1 when he and Yuki made an Ocon sandwich, so that was over for Mick. Nikita stayed out of trouble and had a decent start, but lacked any pace to get really untethered from last place. His goal was to get ahead of Latifi, but with that slowish pit stop, that scuttled that reality, and he ends up in P18 dead last.
There you go. Interesting. You heard the stuff was it qualifying or just practice between him and his engineer? That was something special.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah, very nice.
There's Yuki on him.
Yeah, it's getting a little abrasive there at the Haas team. I feel like there may be some. He may not be the engineer next race. Nikita's the one paying the bills. It's really, right? I mean, it's a tough position to be in, right?
It is.
I mean, you can't direct how you would a race team and the driver if they're the people that are paying your bills, and I don't know. It's just a non-sporting situation to be in, and I'm not sure how. I don't think being in that team would be very enjoyable. Certainly not being on his side of the garage.
It wouldn't. But even like at Aston Martin, who's going to go tell Lance Stroll that he cocked it up?
Right.
Not many.
Nope.
Let's see.
Anyway.
Yeah, let's hand out some awards. That's what we do. First award is Move of the Race. Who'd you have Move of the Race?
I mean, I think you got to give it to the start there with Max around the outside, right? I mean, whether it was a gift from Valtteri or whatever is a very important part and just changed the whole race and control of the race that Max ultimately did.
Yep, that's exactly the same one I had. Max going on the outside of the racing line, taking the lead. That was an easy one for us.
Mm-hmm.
This one may be a little more difficult. Donkey of the race.
We'll do it live.
All right, Paul. Who'd you get?
I'm going to give it to Valtteri. Sorry. I just thought that was a mediocre race move there that he made, and it paid the ultimate price for him, Right. And I thought he just had that was horrible. I think he had a horrible race. And then he had to go through 2 sets of softs even to get the fastest lap in the end. So,
right.
That was an interesting game between Valtteri and Max with the DRS zone, and he's holding me up. It's like, well, he doesn't have to let you get the fastest lap,
Yeah. That was great. We are simpatico. I had Valtteri too for Donkey. All right, let's see if we have the third trifecta drive of the race. Good guy.
Get down.
All right, Paul. Who'd you have drive of the race?
I'm gonna give it to. Honestly, I'm gonna give it to Lewis.
Oh, okay.
Because I think, I just think I was going to give it to Lewis or to Gasly, honestly. So, but I think Lewis actually did a really, really good job with what he had to play with, and you can see when you compare it to what Valtteri did, how different it can be.
Right.
So I think, him just being able to hold on to second place was actually a pretty darn good drive there, considering the car he was driving.
Yeah, no, it totally was. Given the package that he's in and the challenges that they were facing at that altitude and that downforce level and everything, for him, he said he drove his heart out just trying to get to hang in there. And I believe it. I think he did have a great race, not taking anything away from Lewis. He just didn't have the tools,
Right.
So I'm going to give it to Max. I think he was in a completely different zone. He had to execute. He had to manage tires. He was managing his tires. He was asking lots of great questions about other people's tires. What about this, that? It just real heads up.
Where are we going to dinner tonight, guys?
Yeah. I just feel like Max is made an evolutionary turn here.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to stop him.
Yeah, it is.
Actually look at it. But for a couple of races, Max should be like 40 points ahead already.
I know.
He's driving and his season's gone that way. He's just had a couple of things gone against his way, and Lewis had a couple of beneficial things happen. So, he could easily be in really the catbird sweep seat. But if he keeps going the way he's going, he's going to build up that 25-point margin and nearly make the championship unassailable before the end of the season, I think, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he's driving in a different zip code. All right, and then let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
Miles asked this, Paul. Can you explain what drivers are doing during the warm-up lap and hot lap and qualifying? Why are some drivers able to extract more from a car than others? What makes someone like Jarno Trulli very successful in qualifying, but less so in the race?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
And as I've said many times before, qualifying was not my strong point.
Right.
And it's something I always had to keep working on and think about. Why can I not have the pace in qualifying, but have the pace in the race? So definitely something that's I've churned over sleepless nights before. So it is interesting. What are they doing during the warm-up lap? Well, obviously they're preparing the tires. They're trying to maximize and get the tires at the proper temperature, so when they come around that last corner to start that lap, everything is as perfect as it can be. And we know how critical tire temps and pressures and everything are. So between the driver and the team, they actually do a lot of practice before qualifying on seeing what is the best methodology on that out lap to get the tires in the right place, right? So there's that. So you got to get the tires temperature, and then obviously you're trying to get the battery, get as much power out of the battery as well. So you're recharging the battery so that's in 100%, and then you basically release all the power out of the battery over that one lap to basically get as quick a lap as you can.
Right.
But we do here, obviously, even on one lap, you've got to manage the tire. You can't, it's not just you're just hell for leather through every single corner, because you can overheat the tires. Depending on the turns that are coming up in succession, you can come out of like a series of 3 turns, and then the rears will be overheated, and you need those rears for the next turn. So you maybe have to underdrive a little bit, so you have all the grip in the rear tire for the turn that you really makes a bigger difference. So you're really evaluating what turns are crucial as well, that you have the tires more prepared, and you sacrifice maybe a little bit elsewhere previous in the lap, so that you can be at an optimum for the optimum corners technically.
And they're charging batteries, and they're and also on that formation lap, they're testing their bite points of their clutch off the line. Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about qualifying though, which doesn't come into play.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was thinking formation lap too.
Not the formation lap. That's another thing too. Yeah, right. So, and then what's in your head in qualifying? That's something. I said my tendency was to overdrive, but I would, and I think that really is the difference. It's about focus, your ability to focus, and your driving style may be a bit more aggressive. That really adhere itself to a qualifying lap, but over a series of laps has a negative effect for the overall position of the car or feel of the car or grip level of the car. You overdrive, you use everything up, so that over a race, you don't have a car to fight with, right? And so certain people are qualifiers, certain people are racers, certain people can do both. And the ones that can do both were the ones that win championships. So I said, it's so easy to get yourself hyped up for qualifying, thinking you have to take super risks and just pile over the curbs and this and that. But sometimes that's really not the case. And that's, for my case, was why I was always better than in the race, because I was calmer, I was a lot more accurate, and I just hit a rhythm, right? You cannot wait for the rhythm to build up to get a good qualifying lap. You just have to do it then and there. And some people can turn that switch on, and some people can't.
Well, it's a great question, and my dog is sitting here whining at me. He's ready to go. Do you hear that? See, he's ready to go out. All right, so let's wrap it up. That does it for this podcast, because my dog's got to go walkies.
My dog's asleep. No, my dog's left the building.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Be sure to stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Also, if you like the podcast, you can support us over at Patreon or and PayPal. Either way, huge support. We could not and would not do this podcast without you. And if you like the podcast, go over to iTunes. Give us some love. Give us a good rating over there as well. And I apologize, because last week there was no podcast, but by the bare shelves, you can tell I just moved house, as Paul would say in the UK, and everything is in cardboard boxes. So I apologize for that, but hopefully this will start to make sense over the coming weeks as I unpack. And we'll be back again to do Brazil next week. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. It's not what I feel I've got to prove at all. I don't really want to prove anything. I started as an amateur with no idea or no intention of becoming world champion. I was curious to find out what it was like to drive a car fast, to drive on a certain circuit, to drive a certain type of car.
The human soul has a minimum daily requirement of entertainment, but listening to a podcast like you're doing right now, yeah, that doesn't count. Welcome to the world of MGM Rewards, where we have the greatest live shows on earth, the biggest names in sports, the best chefs on the planet, and the most unforgettable nights of your life. This is way beyond watching 20-second clips on your phone. This is all the entertainment you can handle and more. So join MGM Rewards now and visit MGMResorts.com to book your next Vegas getaway. Welcome to the show.